find each other attractive? What makes them want to be intimate? What makes them physically desirable to each other? What might lead to a commitment, a decision to make a commitment to make the relationship last? This is just so nice. I'm giving this lecture on love, and the two of you are holding hands here in the front row. It's really, it's just great. All three elements present: intimacy, passion, and yeah. Okay. Good. Just checking. Okay. So what's interesting about the social psychology of attraction is it has focused on 7 variables. And I've divided these into 2 groups, the big 3 and the more interesting 4. And I call them the big 3 are 3 variables that the effects are so powerful that they almost don't need to be discussed in much detail. The more interesting 4 are the ones I'm going to focus on in this lecture because they're a bit more subtle and they may be things that you've never heard of before. But let's quickly talk about the big 3. The way to understand the big 3 is with the phrase, all other things being equal. All other things being equal, people who find themselves in close spatial proximity to each other, like sharing an armrest in a lecture, will be more likely to be attracted to each other and form a romantic relationship. Okay? All other things being equal. Now, this has been tested in lots of interesting ways. Studies have been done in the city of New York where you can, if you live in Manhattan, you can actually get a very nice metric of how far apart people live from each other in city blocks, right? You have a nice grid pattern and you can use a city block metric to add up the number of blocks between people's doors. And people who live more closely together are more likely to end up in romantic relationships with each other. Seems kind of obvious, right? This even works on college campuses. We can measure in feet the distance between the door to your room and the door to every other room of a student on campus, and there will be a correlation between the likelihood of, it's a negative correlation, the likelihood of getting into a romantic relationship with a person and the number of feet between your door and that person's door. The fewer feet, the more likely a romantic relationship. All other things being equal. Now, all other things being equal is a big qualifier, right? But if we could statistically control for every other variable, all I'd need to do is measure the distance from your door to everybody else's door on campus, and I could chart out who's going to fall in love with whom on the Yale campus. Now, this idea, in a way, is, I don't know, maybe it's a little counterintuitive. There's a kind of cultural myth around the stranger, the person you don't know, who you who you fall in love with, and that is not likely to be the case if it's the person who's nearby, right? And you'll see as we go through the other 2 big 3 that there's a kind of repetition of this theme. It isn't the stranger you fall in love with. All right, let's continue down. Similarity. You've probably heard the phrase, birds of a feather flock together, and that's true when it comes to romance. On any dimension that psychologists have measured in these kinds of studies, when people are more similar, they are more likely to find each other attractive. This could be obvious things like height or age, but it also could be things like attitudes toward capital punishment, preference for the Red Sox over the Yankees, right? All of these are dimensions of similarity. All things being equal, the more similar, the more likely you'll find each other attractive. So opposites don't really attract. Birds of a feather may flock together, but opposites don't really attract each other. Now, usually at this point, somebody in the lecture hall raises their hand and says, well, my boyfriend or my girlfriend and I are complete opposites. And how do you account for that, Professor Salovey? And I usually look at them and I say, good luck to you. And of course, all things might not be equal. There may be other variables at play here, but all things being equal, similarity does not breed contempt. Similarity breeds attraction. Okay? Isn't it interesting we have all of these common sayings that contradict each other, and then empirically some of them turn out to have more evidence supporting them than others. So opposites attract, not much evidence. Similarity breeds contempt, not much evidence. Birds of a feather flock together, yeah, there's some evidence for that idea. Finally, familiarity. Familiarity, we tend to fall in love with people in our environment with whom we are already familiar. The idea that some enchanted evening we will see a stranger. Where are the new blue when you need them? Some enchanted evening you will see a stranger across a crowded room. Right? What musical is that from? South Pacific, very good. You will see a stranger across a crowded room. That's kind of a cultural myth. Of course it happens. But much more common is somebody you already know, somebody you have seen repetitively, you suddenly find attractive, and a relationship forms. Okay? So the big three: people who are similar to you, people who are already familiar to you, people who are nearby in space. These are the people, all things being equal, that you will find attractive. Okay? So those are the big three. Those are big main effects. Those are big, easy to observe in various ways in the lab. By the way, the familiarity idea doesn't just work for people. I can show you words in a language that you don't speak. And I can flash those words to you very quickly. And I can later repeat some of those words and mix in some new ones that you've never seen before. And I can say, I know you don't know what any of these words mean. I know you can't read these characters. But just if you had to tell me, which ones do you like and which ones don't you like? Or how much do you like each one? The ones you will like more, the ones you saw earlier, the ones that you already have familiarity. Even if you don't remember having seen them. Even if that familiarity was generated with such quick exposures that you don't remember even having seen anything, you will get that familiarity effect. Okay? Good.